Torpedo Moscow, partial fan ban over racism at Christopher Samba from the 25th of September 2014. Russia's Torpedo Moscow must close a section of their stadium for their next match following racist abuse aimed at Dynamo Moscow's Christopher Samba. On Tuesday, it was revealed that ex-Blackburn captain Samba, who's 30, asked not to play in the second half of Monday's Moscow derby because of the chants. The Russian Football Union ruled on Thursday Torpedo must shut the fan sector for their next league match. However, all other parts of the Saturn Stadium will remain open. The fan sector is the part of the arena where the most active fans of the home team sit. There are no restrictions in place to prevent those supporters from buying tickets to sit elsewhere in the stadium. Hold on to that one. Away fans will not be affected. After the RFU's ruling, head of disciplinary committee Artur Grigorians said there was a note in the delegates' report that throughout the first half there were chants directed at FC Dynamo player Christopher Samba. The delegate has confirmed it once again at the meeting. The referee of the match has also informed the committee that Samba told him about the chanting during the first corner kick. Samba has also sent a letter to the disciplinary committee where he confirmed the chanting and that he appealed to the referee during the game. On Tuesday, Dynamo Vice President Gennady Soloviev revealed Samba felt offended with Torpedo fans and didn't want to go out on the pitch for the second half. That's why he was replaced. Now, Dynamo won the game 3-1, and manager Stanislav Cherchesov said afterwards that Samba had been substituted because of a calf injury. It is the second racist incident involving Samba after a fan in Moscow threw a banana at him in March 2012 while the defender was playing for Anzi Mahashkala, also another Russian side. You know what, yeah? There's a bit more to this story. And it's actually kind of a sad fact, but Christopher Samba banned for responding to racist abuse in Moscow. This is from Sunday 28th of September 2014. Dynamo Moscow defender Christopher Samba has been banned for 2 matches by the Russian Football Union after responding to racist abuse in a match against Torpedo Moscow. The former QPR and Blackburn centre-half stuck his middle finger up to Torpedo fans on September 22nd before being substituted at half-time. The RFU has said Samba's actions were an unpleasant gesture and they had little option but to ban the Congolese defender. We took into account what happened on the pitch and that he was provoked. Therefore, we decided to give the lightest possible punishment, said Artur Grigorians, head of the disciplinary committee. Samba has apologised for his actions but said, "I want to play football and not have to listen to racial taunts." You know what? Yeah, this. One thing I will say. One thing I will say. And the Gman has had quite an interesting view. I just want to ask you guys in the chat. Racism is a crux in the world, which is essentially hard to police. But do you think in football they should do more? Have any of you faced racism in the game? How do you feel? That's an interesting one, and we'll throw that question out to Twitter, Facebook, and the rest as well. Now, you know what? The fact of the matter is this. The disciplinary committee, by letter of the law, I can understand why they banned Christopher Samba, because you shouldn't retaliate, and especially not in that way. But this kind of thing does come back to what UEFA was saying back before Euro 2012. If you're racially abused and you walk off, then you will be punished. So it's one of them ones. You got double standards from the powers that be. You got Blatter, who a couple years ago was saying, no, there's invisible racism. It's one of them was racism is not a problem. So you got him saying that. So you got the powers that be of the 2 biggest entities in football coming out with those kind of edicts and sending those kind of messages out. And it's a huge source of consternation that the victim has ended up being punished, and the club, Torpedo Moscow, has only had a partial stadium ban. Why not a complete stadium ban? That would have affected Torpedo Moscow a lot more, because at the end of the day, it's a very draconian punishment, and that's what it needs to be. It's one of them ones. The fact of the matter is, bigotry and idiocy can only be combated by education. The moronic need education. And the fact of the matter is, if you punish in a draconian fashion, then you've got to do it uniformly. You can't be handing out these little paltry sanctions, partial stadium bans and all that, because we saw CSKA Moscow last season with the racist chanting at Yaya Toure. We saw that, and that only got a partial stadium ban as well. So it's clear that a partial stadium ban sanction isn't working. And they ended up playing matches behind closed doors as well, lest we forget that. But even so, those are paltry punishments. We saw Porto get fined only 14 grand for racial abuse against Mario Balotelli and others. So it's one of them ones where the fact of the matter is, it's concerning that it's this one comment in particular. Where was it? The RFU said Samba's actions were an unpleasant gesture. I think you'll find the racial abuse was an unpleasant gesture to the Russian Football Union. I think you'll find that was a lot more unpleasant than just sticking a middle finger up at a bunch of morons. I'm not condoning what Samba did, but the fact of the matter is, emotions are running high. You're being abused because of the colour of your skin. You're being abused because of some moronic reason by a bunch of morons who clearly are low lives with no lives. At the end of the day, racism is a blight. Not only in football, but in society as well. So some people who don't generally talk football and are trying to jump on the bandwagon and blame football for racism and the ills of society, you might instead of pointing those guns at football, you might want to point those guns at the rest of society as well, because football is a microcosm of society. Fact is, I said, idiocy. If you can't educate the morons, then you've got to, I think you've got to, as well as trying to educate them, you've got to punish them in a draconian fashion. Because at the end of the day, if they don't learn from the education, they're going to eventually learn from the punishments. If the punishments are harsh enough. That's where I think the powers that be drop the ball on numerous occasions. These paltry punishments, and then they start moving the goalposts for punishments. Oh, well, we can't close the whole stadium, so we'll just close part of it. Oh, we can't make you play too many games behind closed doors, so we'll just make it 1 instead of 3. And these suspended bans, and these little paltry money fines that ain't gonna do anything. That's what gets me about the powers that be. Now, there was a discussion that I was involved in, and big shout out to the post-match playmaker group on Facebook. But I'm gonna come back to the post-match playmaker discussion that Craig Django Gilbert actually brought up. Jezzy, Gman, I want your views first, and then we'll jump in to the post-match playmaker group, and then we'll jump into the Skypers as well. Jezzy, Gman, have it. One of you have it first.
Well,
because I'm disgusted. To be fair.
The thing is, I agree with you. In principle, I understand the ban for Samba. I do.
Yeah.
In principle, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
In application, it makes no sense.
Well, it's theory and practice, two different things, isn't it?
It makes absolutely no sense, right? Because my thing with it is this. The guy was being continually abused. He's already reported it to the necessary people that he could have reported it to at the time.
Yeah. Even the delegate said in the report, it was happening.
This is it. So I'm like, what else is he meant to do? And I know that, people say, if you walk off the pitch, then, you're going to be punished as well. But I'm like, it's an untenable situation. Like, legitimately. I know that gets thrown around in football a lot as a turn of phrase. But in this particular case, it's more than fitting. What else is he supposed to do? Now, as I say, do I personally condone Christopher Samba reacting in that way? No, personally, I don't. I think that, what happened to him was his emotions got the best of him, and it was an emotional response rather than one that was well thought out. Because I think that the best thing for him to do was not to react publicly. But at the same time, I don't mean to aim that as a criticism at him, because I'm not in that situation. And having said that, even if I was, honestly, I probably would have done the same.
Yeah.
right? Now, I agree with you about these paltry bans and suspensions and all that. There's literally, I don't see the point in them. I really don't. A partial stadium, but what?
Yeah.
Listen, shut the stadium down.
Yeah, you've already punished one Russian team with a partial stadium ban, and then this happens with another Russian team.
Shut the stadium. It's as simple as that. Shut the stadium, right? Or whatever the other thing you can do, whatever match day income they will get for however many games, take that money, okay? Give it to a leading anti-racism charity. Do that. Educate fans, as you say. Do something like that as opposed to, we're just going to close a small portion of the stadium. What does that do? Right? How the team still benefit, the club still benefit. You see what I mean? Then even if they pay a fine, the fine is so insignificant. It's like, what's the point? You might as well not bother with it. Do you know what I mean? And having said that, it's not the first time that Chris Samba's faced abuse. So I'm like, what's the FA doing? Is this not an issue for them? Yeah. And if the FA is not going to intervene, what's the point in having FIFA and UEFA? They're not going to intervene. So if nobody, and as I say, I can totally understand Chris Samba's reaction in the sense of, if nobody else is going to do something about it, then he obviously feels he has to do something. Now, is that necessarily the right thing? As I say, in my opinion, no, it's not. But in the absence of action from everybody else, what else is there? In that high pressure situation, what else do you expect him to do as a human being? So in terms of the ban, as I say, in theory I get it. In practice, no. In practice, he should have been excused, because when you look at it, before anything else happened, he's already reported this several times. He's already said, look, I don't even want to come out for the second half because of this. So what else is he meant to do? Like, legitimately, that's my question. What else is he meant to do?
I mean, it's a difficult one, because at the end of the day, you can't condone Samba's reaction, but at the same time, it's like, you're being racially abused. It's not a nice thing to have, and it's just how can you respond to morons without dropping to their level? That would be part of it as well. I mean, Gman, you still with us, Gman?
Yeah.
What was your view on the Samba thing? Because, hey, it's one of them. I think it's disgraceful that in this day and age, and there's a World Cup going to Russia soon. That's the scary thing.
Yeah.
You know what? Just touching on, agree with both of you and Jezzie's points. And just touching on something Jezzie said, the emotional aspect, like Jezzie's right. Basically, it was an emotional reaction, and at the end of the day, players are emotional on the pitch all the time. They swear at referees all the time. Do they get fined? Do they get sent off? And that's why I don't understand this ban. Because, okay, he swore at the fans, but I'm pretty sure it's the same as swearing at the referee, the person who's actually in control of the game.
Yeah.
Are they taking those powers and using it against the players? For me, that whole scenario just looks like they're aiding and abetting racism, because at the end of the day, they're saying, all right, fair enough, you've committed a sin in which is you've sworn on the pitch, and you just happen to swear at the fans, which is wrong. However, if you had done it at the referee, we would have it wouldn't have been wrong. The referee probably wouldn't have given you a yellow card. We've seen it so many times where players are swearing, effing and blinding, telling the referee to F off and all sorts, and the referee just runs past him like it's nothing. That's the way I'm looking at the whole situation. And just the racism.
You raised a very valid point about the double standard, and it is a huge double standard in that, as you say, you would think that, okay, you sworn at a fan, right? And that gets a ban. Surely swearing at a referee gets a ban. But please, back to your point.
No, I'm just saying the racism in general, it's like, it's just one of those things, man. In that region of the world, they just still haven't, adapted. I don't know what it is that if they haven't adapted to seeing a lot of black faces or people who are not from that region of the world in that part of the world. It's just crazy that you've got big teams that are in the Champions League, teams that are well known, teams that take some of the best players around the world, and this problem is just fierce over there. It's like they are literally 30 years behind.
It's one of them ones. Jamie Bailey said in the chat about Samba did just what I did in the situation like this, react. The only thing is the reaction is taken into account more than the action itself, and it gets to me a lot that life happens to be that way, and Jamie thinks that Samba did the right thing.
But I also think you raised the interesting point, and I will touch on Mr. Bailey's point as well about the World Cup, right? And it's all in the name. The World Cup is the rest of the world.
It's supposed to be everybody, inclusive, not exclusive, just like us.
Going to Russia, okay, and this is how they're treating players that are playing in the professional league in their own country.
Playing regularly as well.
So what happens to everybody else who isn't indigenous to Russia or Ukraine, or even Kazakhstan, etc., who come to Russia at that point for the World Cup? Like, how are Russia even going to be allowed to continue to host it with this now being a black mark against them? And
no pun intended.
No pun intended. and a high profile one at that. Like, as I say, UEFA not looking into this, or FIFA not looking into this, are they both not looking into this to go and...
But the thing is, both of them are preoccupied. Well, we'll probably get into this next week now, but it's one of them ones. UEFA and FIFA are preoccupied with an argument about goddamn watches.
Yeah.
See, again, this is the thing that frustrates me about the PTB, the powers that be in football. Yeah, there kind of isn't a obligatory wrestling reference with the word powers that be. But the fact of the matter is, this is what gets me about the powers that be in football. FIFA and UEFA haven't said anything about this Samba thing, but they're quick to come out with this whole with the ethics committee meeting recently. Yeah, you've got to give back the watches. So your ethics committee met, and the main thing to come out of that was, give back a bunch of watches, rather than what you're going to do to tackle the blight of racism in football. Congratulations, UEFA and FIFA, and to FIFA's ethics committee, and to FIFA's Council of Wisdom that does bugger all. Is one of them. Congratulations. See, this is the thing again with the powers that be. These morons want to line their own pockets and keep their corruption private. Yeah, Blatter's already come out and said, "Oh yeah, no, I don't want this corruption report public." Oh, you got something to hide, Sepp? You got something to hide? Because why else would you not want the report public? Because it implicates you? It's one of them ones. You're more concerned with running and ruining the game, and so are the other powers that be. Platini, you ain't getting off lightly in terms of my vitriol. It's a case of, again, these double bloody standards in regards to tackling stuff. The powers that be being a day late and $1 short with racism. And it's one of them was to quote Vince McMahon from '98. I'm damn sick and tired of it. I really am. I'm sick and tired of having to raise my blood pressure being concerned about this kind of thing. I'd rather be positive. I'd rather be positively Liam rather than part of the CWO, aka the Cynics World Order. I'd rather not, to be perfectly frank. But I mean,
we will come to the guys in the Skype chat.
Yeah, rant aside, I just want to come back to the debate that Craig Django Gilbert started in the post-match playmaker group.
Yeah,
because it was a very interesting one. He said Christopher Samba is, not for the first time, in brackets, a victim of racial abuse in a match in Russia, sticks his middle finger up to the abusive fans and gets a 2-game ban. Yeah, because ignoring racism will make it go away. Roll on the World Cup 2018 and a couple of little emoticons with that. Now, obviously, the sarcasm in that you can read. You don't even need to read between the lines. The sarcasm is clear there from Craig Django Gilbert. Tyrone Dominique replied first saying, just ban their A double crooked letters, all European competitions and play behind closed doors for a couple seasons. That'll teach them, even take the World Cup away from them.
Yeah.
Which is a fair suggestion.
Yeah.
Craig Django Gilbert replied by saying they should never have got the World Cup in the first place. We've debated that since it happened in late 2010. It's one of them was racism and homophobia are prevalent. Sepp Blatter even said that gay fans shouldn't go to the World Cup in Russia. Again, the powers that be. If the powers that be have got that attitude, how are they going to stamp anything out anyway? But we'll come back to that. I can't help but feel if this was England, though, the steps you said would have happened. I mean, all the clubs got banned from Europe for a Liverpool problem, that being Heysel. Which it was just basically a blanket ban on English clubs back in the 80s, which actually robbed Everton of a potential European run. So it's one of them was obviously there's an axe to grind there. Samba has had bananas thrown at him before. He gets no protection, and I fear that one day he will get attacked, which is a realistic fear.
Yeah.
Because if idiots are willing to throw stuff, there's not that much of a leap between dashing stuff from the stands
and a bottle.
And and a bottle, or like, oh my God, remember what happened with Hugh Dallas in Scotland? The two, I think it was like £1 coin, clean in the head. Yeah. And it's one of them ones.
And all sorts.
Yeah, there's what I think it was Dida a couple seasons ago when he got hit by something. And it's like, there's not that much of a leap between that and a fan actually coming onto the pitch and attacking you. Yeah. Remember what happened at Stevenage Newcastle? We did chuckle about it, but there's a serious issue there. Pitch invasion, someone getting punched in the face. But coming back to the post-match playmaker group, it's one of them ones. Charles Edafua said, if Russia get banned, then everyone has to get banned, including Spain, Italy, etc. Not as well pronounced as the Eastern Bloc, but it happens. I genuinely don't see any way this can be controlled. How do you stop individuals being dumb? To which Craig Django Gilbert said, if fans knew that their club could be banned, dock points, or even relegated, the racist behaviour would stop. Might take a couple of clubs worldwide, but they will soon catch on. That's a point that we've obviously thrown out before and debated as well. But also, to which I came back and said, education is how you stop idiocy, bigotry, and ignorance. Not just education in terms of tolerance, but education that if you commit offences, especially repetitively, you will get draconian sanctions handed down. To which Tyrone Dominique said, sometimes marginalising the few that do these stupid things will work. It becomes their fault for their nation's clubs and teams not being able to compete at the top competitions and lose revenue because of it. Revenue is an important word, and I'm going to stick on that in a sec. There has to be consequences, severe ones, to make the people learn that these things can't continue to happen. Sanction every single thing you can at these animals. To which Aaron Levi has said, banning people doesn't produce a cure, they need to be educated, which is obviously tying into what I said previously. To which Tyrone Dominique replied, how do you educate those that don't listen? Craig Django Gilbert replied and said, education is a long-term solution. This is a problem that needs a faster fix. Hold on to that one. To which I replied, by the way, Torpedo Moscow, who committed the offence, have had a partial stadium ban, but we argued on Pitch Talk Live last season that kind of punishment with a measly fine means nothing, but the PTB in football seem to have no problem undermining their own rules. And that was from me. Richard Tichera has said, and I hope I've got the pronunciation of your name right. I said it's hard to stop people being dumb, but what we can do is be proactive with things. This is an example of a thought I had the other day. Everyone's been to a club that scans your ID, right? When you scan your ticket to attend the match, it should also take a quick scan of passport or driving license so that the seat can be associated with the person. Therefore, when things like this happen, you can rapidly hand out the punishment and show it will not be tolerated. I don't even think banning clubs would help, as these guys will only learn when they get punished. In the end of the day, it's not the club being racist. My idea would cost a nightmare and be hard to implement, but it shows there are ideas we could use out there. Education, as Liam said, but that is more of a longer term application, as you won't teach these old idiots new tricks. That one about scanning the passport and the driving license, they already do that with hooligans. Yeah. Before major tournaments, confiscate their passports so they can't leave the country. But at the same time, scanning someone's card, people pass the cards around. Like the Gman going to the Emirates, the Gman's not a season ticket holder at Arsenal, but he knows someone who is, and that's how he's getting to go to games. So there's an easy way around that. Yeah. There's chicanery that can be pulled. But Craig Django Gilbert replied by saying, yes, banning teams and or docking huge amounts of points. Lab mice soon learn which cheese gives an electric shock. Which I replied, every club has a moronic minority, and we also had a debate about the Zenit fans and their racist fringe. That is a Pitch Talk rant of the week now, which is called Zenit fans and their racist elite dream. Check that out on YouTube. But also, a fast, quick fix is not the solution to a long-term problem. That's like throwing money at a poorly run business and hoping the money fixes the bad management. A short-term fix will exacerbate, not remedy the situation. That's my view. At Craig Django Gilbert said, in Russia, though, this is not a minority problem. Aaron Levi said, remember when the youth done exchange trips? They need to bring back those exchange programs, travel and communication, public relations, etc. Too much internet nowadays, which is an interesting point. To which I said in reply, to educate those that don't listen is one of them ones where draconian sanctions, and yes, I actually did write it, one of them ones, where draconian sanctions with education built in needs to be used as a strategy. If they don't listen to the education, then they'll listen to the draconian sanctions and end up having to listen to the education to ease the sanctions. The phrase I've coined on Pitch Talk Live is to punish uniformly and in a draconian fashion, which of course Gezzie quoted me earlier on that. No favoritism, punish all who break the rules equally. Now, Craig Django Gilbert said, this is a country where a 9-year-old Persian girl was stabbed to death by neo-Nazis. They should play no part in football in a truly global game. Craig Django Gilbert said the director of the Moscow Bureau for Human Rights, Alexander Brod, stated that surveys showed xenophobia and other racist expressions are prevalent in 50% of Russians. It's also in 2006, Amnesty International reported that racism in Russia was out of control, in brackets, in inverted commas, and estimated, where are we? The number of Russian neo-Nazis at around 85,000 in 2008. So it's one of them ones. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's just, and I love that debate on the post-match playmaker group. I love that debate because at the end of the day, it's just crazy that this stuff is allowed to go on, and it is. And no matter what, poor punishments and less than harsh punishments are basically acting as enablers to this behavior. I don't know if anyone agrees with me, but a slack punishment is basically an indirect enabler to this kind of behavior.
Well, it's like we said, the clubs have to feel it, the management of the clubs need to feel it, and overall, for me, the country needs to feel it. And now there has to be, in my opinion, a very, very stern warning from, as you say, the powers that be. Why the powers that be haven't stepped in and said, look, if there is another incident, of racism in your country in terms of football, we will review the situation regarding your World Cup bid. Simple as that. As I say, that, it's probably a little bit too harsh, and they want to look at all the other avenues before they get to that point. But, the fact of the matter is, as I say, with an event as big as the World Cup, you can't afford to ignore that. But Mr. Bailey's actually made a very, very interesting point that I wanted to touch on, and he says, the problem isn't the World Cup is going to Russia. It's that the situation with Russia is a political powerhouse, and there's a political powder keg at the minute. If you're actually paying attention to what's going on in the news, and obviously with the biggest footballing event in the world being the World Cup going there, there's a lot of things that you really don't want to trigger off. With certain actions. Well, one of them being withdrawing the World Cup.
Well, so, it's one of them ones. It was mentioned in the post-match playmaker. I think by Richard Teixeira about, or it was Tyrone, one of the two, about revenue. This is, I think, one of the important things, because if you get hurt in your pocket, you're gonna stand up and take notice. If when the tax rate rose from 17.5% to 20%. There was uproar about that because it's hitting people directly in the pocket, and it's one of them ones. If the amount of benefit someone can earn goes down, people will uprise about that because it's hurting them in the pocket, and it's one of them. It's one of them ones. People sit up and take notice when crap hits the fan, but it's one of them ones. Why does it always have to get to that point? Is it going to take someone being seriously hurt in a racial incident before people step up and take notice and actually mobilize and do something?
For the powers that be, probably.
That's the scary thing.
Going back
it's like with the Confederations Cup. When they were rioting during that, it's like I was saying last year, it would be a case of, to stop the World Cup, someone will have to die for them to even consider stopping it.
But going to the socials, Alexis GS Lewis, thank you
Who is
so very much for your thoughts and opinions.
Who is also a part of the post-match playmaker group as well and was asking for the link. Thank you.
Yeah. He actually said, football needs to follow what the United States of America do with racism, homophobia and domestic violence. Personally, I disagree with that view, but this is what Alexis had to say. Donald Sterling has been forced to sell the LA Clippers. Ray Rice has been suspended for domestic violence in the NFL. Sport has the power to influence the world due to the amount of people who watch and follow sport. It is far deeper than racism, taking a zero-tolerance approach, but eventually educate and set standards that society has to follow. Football is a business, however, and the cost of banning clubs and players is too much compared to disciplining the footballer, because the people will always watch football. If FIFA, UEFA and sporting governing bodies placed strong fines, bans and drew clear guidelines, eventually clubs would fall in line and the younger generations would eventually phase racism out. So again, very, very interesting point.
Yeah, I like that. The youth are our future.
Yeah.
We may be the present, but the youth are our future. I mean, I've got a 17-year-old younger brother. His generation, my younger sister as well, who's 21, it's one of them ones. Those two are forming the future. And it was said in a completely separate point, but you've got to educate the youngsters.
Yeah.
The youngsters are the key. You've got to educate them. You've got to educate them as early as possible that idiocy, bigotry, hatred based on someone's gender, based on someone's race, it's one of them ones. It's not acceptable. Got to educate them from early. That would be my view on it. I mean, a couple of Skypers I know want to jump in on this. Jamie Bailey, do you want to jump in on this point?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just mentioning in the chat. Basically, I live on the. If anybody heard the sirens, I don't think they were police sirens. Basically, I just see it as once we go to Russia, things are not going to change, because if anybody watched the Winter Olympics either last year or this year, things happened there and it didn't make any difference. Things are happening in Ukraine where they shot down a plane and everybody couldn't be asked just to find out who actually shot it. Same thing that's happening around the world with that to do with Russia, and everybody's kind of putting themselves off. And the reason why everybody's scared to tell Russia off is because most of the oil and refineries and all the electricity are pretty much coming from Russia. And nobody wants to take that away, because once they say something, Russia all Russia has to do is pull out, and then what does the world have? Hence the reason why weapons of mass destruction are pretty much coming from Russia, but nobody's saying anything about that. Hence the reason why the World War II still is pretty much happening now, and why everybody else is pretty much scared of what Germany can say and what pretty much the two powerhouses of the Western world can say. Because even if you go over to Japan and China, they're still paying stuff off to Russia, or they've got links towards Russia as well. So in terms of the footballing side of things, it's not really, you can't really say to Samba, I still think he did the right thing, to be honest with you, because I've reacted in a certain way which it got me into trouble. But I would say in the grand scheme of things, it's almost like his reaction, he could have just gone and scored and then silenced the crowd. That would have been, or he could have just stopped somebody from shooting in the next play, and then silenced the crowd and said, put his hands down like Ronaldo does in his celebrations.
But that's part of the reason why we were like, I was like, you know what, I can't condone Samba swearing at the fans, but it's an emotional thing. You can't help it. It's a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I said.
It's the same thing for me though. I've been in that situation, and it's hell to pay. But the problem is that when there is going to be more than just Samba and Etu and a whole bunch of other guys and at the World Cup in 2018, it's still going to happen. Whether they're going to ban the stadiums, they just simply can't do it, because then it's going to have, as you said, excuse the pun, a black mark on the World Cup. So then what do you do? What do you do with that? Is you let it happen? Is what Sepp Blatter is pretty much doing? Is letting things happen because he knows he's still going to be in power by the end of the next election, because nobody else in Europe will be able to stand up against him because they won't vote.
But see, but I mean, it's one of them ones where, of course, you got the corrupt powers that be, which I've mentioned already. I mean, Blatter right now is one of them ones. He's in a spot that similar. I got to compare it to wrestling. It's one of them was he's in a spot he has no right to fill right now. Like Shawn Michaels had no right to hold the WWF title after Montreal in '97, and that's what Rick Rude said on when he appeared on Nitro. What's wrong with professional wrestling? You got a guy running around with a belt he has no right to. So one of them was Sepp Blatter is running around as head of FIFA and he's got no right to be there. He wasn't even elected last time out. He was basically coronated. Here you go, here's another term. And he said that would be his last term, and he's recently come out and said, nah, I'm staying on for another term. And it's like, when you've got that, it's crazy. But the Gman actually mentioned the point as well. I mean, Gman, you still there with us? I hope he is. Okay, cool. I think
he might have gone for a walk.
Yeah.
And he's back, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, we're gonna have to round it. We're gonna have to round out with your point, but that question you put was very interesting in the Skype chat.
Yeah, I know it's slightly leading off from the fact of it actually happening at football grounds, but you look at other countries around the world. For instance, USA, with their recent spate of problems, with police brutality against all, not just black people, against all races, and racism as a whole in that country. Like, if USA were to bid for our next World Cup, would you not give it to them because of racism? Would you give them the same sort of stigmatism that Russia's getting? That's just my question. And then, that can be applied to many countries across the world. Is that happening? Is Russia getting bullied?
See, for me, that's an interesting one because, I mean, it's one of them ones. Yeah, there are a lot of problems generally in society. So if you take it away from Russia, where is it going that hasn't got problems?
Yeah,
and this is the thing that I mentioned earlier, partly in part mentioned earlier about football being a microcosm of society, which I've said on many occasions. But also the fact is there are a lot of people trying to point the guns at football and say, "Oh, football's so bad." But you look at modern society. You got the whole, I think it's Trayvon Martin thing, you got the Ferguson thing, you got Stephen Lawrence, you got so many other examples. I mean, the Metropolitan Police have been found out to be, on numerous occasions, to be institutionally racist. So you've got all of these problems. Race problems are not limited to just one country.
No.
But the fact of the matter is, in terms of sanctions, draconian sanctions, you have to start somewhere. You can't continue to throw out these poor, basically J-Bro punishments that no one is going to take notice of or bat an eyelid to. That, for me, is the problem. And punishing the victim as well sends out the wrong message. So that would be where I'd see it. I mean, Wayne Schumann was going to jump in, but he said, but everything he was going to say has been said. And Jamie Bailey said, but the problem is the future is not considered in making changes to the rules. The present situation is what makes the rule changes and changes to the rules, and that's the problem. That is a major problem. Yeah, you got to think of the future.
Absolutely,
always got to think of the future. And football is concerningly short-termist.
Yeah,
in many ways.
But just to chime in quickly on the G-Man's point, it doesn't matter where it would go as an alternative. As you say, all of those alternatives that would be brought up have their own problems. But I think that, as you say, it has to start somewhere. And right about now, this is a prevalent issue that needs to be addressed. And failing to address it is where really the powers that be are letting everybody down. Not just the footballing community. As I say, it's something that's much bigger than football that needs to be addressed and addressed quickly.